It is your time, USC fans. Trojan time. Trojan Conquest live right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all stopping by. Pull up a chair. 60 minutes with Matt Zemek of Trojan's Wire talking USC football. We appreciate you all being here. Give us a like. Get it out of the way. You know you're going to enjoy the show. And, of course, subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. Matt, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, and you've been helping me with off-season college football research, something for which I'm very grateful. I wouldn't trust anyone other than Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. So thank you very much for that. In terms of life at USC, well, we're the women's beach volleyball four-time national champions, but that's not what people come here for. They come here for defensive line splashes in the transfer portal, and USC was like the Dodgers in the National League Championship Series, swing and a miss with Derek Harmon at Michigan State. And, obviously people are really upset. They're really frustrated. I mean, they should be. That was a big one. We wrote about it at Trojan's Wire. They really needed this one. And when I write about this or when I say it on a program such as this here at the Voice of College Football, if you go out and say, you really need X and you don't get X, you can't, after the fact, you can't just say, well, just you win some, lose some, not that big a deal. No. You can't walk it back. That's a stinging defeat. It's a stinging defeat. And the fact that it happens at the hands of Oregon yet again, that just twists the knife a little more for the USC fan base. And of course, the fact that Oregon's joining USC in the Big Ten, as opposed to being in another conference, that adds to the weight of it. And so, it really creates an interesting conversation, not just among USC fans, but among all college football fans, is that when we look at these transfer portal movements and these transfer portal choices, when you look at Oregon, the natural inclination is to say, well, Phil Knight's Nike money, that's just a heavyweight, a powerhouse, and USC couldn't compete with that. And there's some truth there. And I want to affirm up front that when USC fans and maybe other non-Oregon fans, probably also Washington fans are aligned with USC fans in this regard, when they say, Phil Knight's money is supreme and Oregon's NIL situation is such a juggernaut, there's truth there. All right. So I want to affirm that point. But where this discussion gets more complicated and where there needs to be a little bit more nuance is, and I wrote about this over the weekend at Trojan's Wire, I just want to make sure people think it's not the only reason these recruits and these transfer portal prospects are making these decisions. It's a big reason. If you wanted to say it's the main reason, it's a central reason, I'm not here to argue with that. I'm not here to fight against that. But where I say, whoa, pump the brakes, is when people say it's the only reason. Oh, he just went there for the money. Oregon had a bigger bag. That's it. No, it wasn't it. I mean, it certainly helped. It's certainly leverage. It's certainly a big factor. Not arguing against any of that. But there are other things. And one thing, when USC and Oregon go head to head and Oregon wins, which is has usually been happening, that's been happened the majority of the time the past few years, people will say, Matt, Dan Lanning didn't beat Lincoln Riley. This was Daddy Phil coming in with his bag of bucks. And again, NIL is pretty darn important, and Oregon has marketed itself, presented itself in an attractive way in things that go way beyond Dan Lanning. That's true. There's a lot of truth to these claims. I'm just kind of trying to carve truth into certain buckets and make sure that we're getting a fuller story and a fuller picture. That stuff is important. So I'm not dismissing it. I'm not denying it, certainly. But when people say, well, Dan Lanning didn't beat out Lincoln Riley, actually, yes, he did. And there are a couple layers of the onion that need to be peeled away here. One is that if Oregon had Mark Helfrich or Willie Taggart as head coach, No, these NIL victories would not be happening. Okay, it does matter who's captaining the ship. It does matter who's overseeing the football operations. Helfrich couldn't keep Oregon afloat after the majestic Marcus Mariota 2014 season, the run to the national championship game against Urban Meyer and Ohio State. After that, he tanked. Like, he could not sustain the program after, he made great use of what Chip Kelly gave him. When that handing of the baton occurred, Helfrich maxed out with what he got, with the groceries that Chip Kelly gave him. But when he had to do his own shopping, he had nothing. He was a washed-up pitcher throwing 88-mile-an-hour meatballs center cut down the middle of the plate, getting swatted out of the park 500 feet. And then Willie Taggart, taking over after Helfrich, couldn't get it done. And so if those guys, either one, if they were in charge in Eugene, we wouldn't be seeing this. So Dan Lanning does have a certain degree of competence here. He certainly has a certain level of responsibility and therefore credit for what Oregon's doing. Like, he is definitely making this program look attractive so that when Oregon does come in with the NIL offer, recruits get a full picture and a full package that they think is appealing. So money's there as a primary thing. Again, not arguing with that, but it's just, Dan Lanning's peripheral to this. No, he isn't. The coach really matters. And so the final piece of this puzzle, Mark, to lay out for viewers here at the Voice of College Football, is that it's not only Dan Lanning doing something good, it's also Lincoln Riley failing. And let's now be very careful in explaining this. And USC fans might say, wait a minute, Lincoln Riley's been doing really good things this year, remaking his defensive staff, bringing aboard Eric Henderson, Coach Henney, and the dog work. Yes, Lincoln Riley is making good moves. He is making good decisions with some of these guys in the portal. I'm not talking about Derek Harmon, but I'm talking about some other guys. He hasn't overpaid for guys, and Isaiah Rakes didn't seem to be measuring up. See ya, good decision there as well. So Lincoln Riley is making good choices. But when we look at this Derek Harmon situation, and we look at this Derek Harmon failure, a battle that USC really needed to win but didn't, you can't really blame this on Eric Henderson because he's new, he's just on staff, he can sell the program, but he's just been at USC for 3 months. You can't really put it on him. You can't really put it on Danton Lynn. Lincoln Riley has put them in this position, but they haven't coached a game yet. They are on the right track, but they don't have, just by the simple fact that they're new, they don't have a USC track record yet. I mean, doing good things, but nothing in terms of on the field coaching, nothing in terms of an actual game, an actual season. They just have to compile a resume. So even though Lincoln Riley has made lots of good choices this year and he's made lots of good restructuring decisions, this Derek Harmon failure still falls on him, right? Partly because you can't really put it on any of the members of the defensive staff, but also if we want to really connect the dots here, this failure to land Derek Harmon is traced to 2 basic things. One, Oregon is closer to winning a national championship than USC. Now, Trojan fans might hate me for saying that, but that's the truth. And we deal with the truth at Trojans Wire. We certainly try to deal with the truth here at the Voice of College Football. Would any reasonable person say, no, Oregon's not closer to a national championship right now than USC? I don't think you can credibly make that case. Oregon's just been getting a higher level of recruiting, higher level in the transfer portal, has Dylan Gabriel, a guy with several years of proven results in college football. Miller Moss could be great. I'm not saying he won't be, but just if you're comparing Miller Moss to Dylan Gabriel, one guy is more proven than the other. Didn't say better, more proven. One guy has proved more so far in his collegiate career than the other. So when you put all that together, Oregon is closer right now than USC. Now that could change. Maybe USC beats LSU in week 1. Oregon steps on a rake. Could be in late September, USC will be closer to a national title than Oregon will. Okay. But right now, it's Oregon's closer. And so when we go full circle and bring this back to the beginning, Derek Harmon, he might have chosen Oregon and Dan Lanning over Lincoln Riley because of the bag, because of the NIL. That might have been the main thing. But like if it was a tie or if it was a close call, when you factor in the NIL and like the incentives and all those things, I'm sure that a part of Derek Harmon's calculus was that I can be a piece on a national championship puzzle, or I can be a piece on a college football playoff puzzle if I go to Oregon rather than USC. And I might get NFL level development from Coach Henney, but I could get NFL level development in Eugene and play for a national championship. And that all goes back to Lincoln Riley wasting that 2023 season, running it back with Alex Grinch, running it back with Dante Williams, and one of the things that you remember here, Mark, like you were part of this. I see Tim, he's trying to get on. He kind of briefly popped in, but then we lost the connection with him. But Tim seems to be about to join us here. All of us in the 2023 off season, before the 2023 Pac-12 football season, we all said wins are going to sell recruits. Winning is the ultimate proof of concept. Winning is the ultimate argument that you make on the trail. Winning is the ultimate case you make in the portal. And so Lincoln Riley, while making great decisions since the end of the 2023 season, he is still paying the price for the decisions that he made in early 2023. That is what led to the failed 2023 season. That is why Oregon is closer to a national championship right now than USC is. That's undeniably a part. I'm not saying it's the main driver, maybe, but it's certainly a part of why Derek Harmon looked at Eugene, he looked at LA, and he said, I'm going to go to Dan Lanning instead of Lincoln Riley because Oregon's closer to where it's supposed to be than USC is right now. So long answer, but like you can see everyone who's watching here at the Voice of College Football, you can see how nuanced this is. You can see all the layers of the onion. You can see all, the different specific details and pressure points and competing factors. It's not just Daddy Phil's money. That has a lot to do with it. Again, I've never argued with that or questioned that. I'm just trying to make sure we don't think that's the only thing, that it's just that and nothing else, and everything else is irrelevant. That's the main thing I want to stress here for the audience at the Voice of College Football.
Tim Prangley, everyone. Trojans Wire, and of course, host here at the Voice of College Football SC. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Just listening to Matt. I don't agree with everything you said, but appreciate his thoughts on the whole thing. I think you did hit on one very clear note that it is not just the money. I totally agree. I've had at least, more than one parent say that just the whole process and the recruiting, they got it going on up there at Oregon. I know as a St. John Bosco guy that just seems like St. John Bosco is just going right up to Eugene these days. They just got Peyton Woodyard the last one from that really great class heading up, going with going Mateo. So, I would tell you this though, Matt, are they closer? Because I'm not sold on their coaching staff. See, here's the difference. You're right. They have the roster. I would agree. We got the coaching staff. That's where I'm going to go. Dan Lanning hasn't shown me yet that he is an elite coach yet. He has had the best roster in the Pac-12 for a while, but that's because he's had the best roster for a while. He didn't get that. That was started by Mario Cristobal, who got that in place for him. And so to say that, you did name Willie Taggart. So Taggart wasn't there long enough to recruit anything really. And then with Dan Lanning, with Mario Cristobal, he was killing it in recruiting. He was doing very well with overpaying with Uncle Phil's money. It is not the only reason why they're landing players, but I would say in this case and what's going on, let's face it, there was absolutely a push. It was made very clear that I mean, I'm not sure. I don't want to misquote it, but from what I think I heard is that he literally had an agent kind of working for him in order to get to work through the NIL and to work through everything. This kid was very savvy in what he was doing. If I got my information correct about Harmon, there's nothing wrong with that. But the point to say that it's that Dan Lanning, his cunning and his high stakes and his great coaching and his exceptional recruiting. No, this, I believe, did come down to a hell of a lot of money. I really do. And as far as, they're closer, I do agree. Their roster is much closer, in a much better position to win a national championship this year.
I mean,
it seems like they're paying. They're not just paying Matt. They're not just competing. They are paying way over the top for these guys. So if they're paying even money or pretty close, then I'd go with your assumption that it's not, the money. But when they're paying way over the asking price, everyone else and everyone backs off. I don't know if that's recruiting. I think that's just outpaying everybody.
Okay, I do want to say, just in terms of X's and O's, so that's a separate deal. In terms of X's and O's, yes, you're right. Dan Lanning has not yet proven himself at an elite level. And like Oregon, USC, Oregon should have blown USC out in my mind in terms of just like the talent level between last year's two teams, and it was in Eugene at night at Alex Grinch. Grinch wasn't actually coaching in that game; he had been fired. But you had an interim USC staff, cobbled together. That should have been, if Dan Lanning was squeezing every ounce of potential out of Oregon, or the Ducks would have absolutely thrashed USC. But it was just a 9-point win. So I'm right there with you in terms of, Oregon not winning championships. It didn't win the Pac-12 last year, despite that roster. I'm right there with you in terms of X's and O's that Dan Lanning has not yet proved himself, but he's really good at everything else. All the other parts of a coach's job description. And Lincoln Riley, while being an X and O genius, that one decision to stick with Alex Grinch and run it back in 2023, that one decision just wasted a year and it set USC back. And that proof of concept, winning games, which USC did have in 2022, couldn't replicate it in 2023. And the Trojans, I think, are still paying that price for what happened in 2023. And it's unfortunate, but it's there. And so, in terms of, what you and a few other people are saying about how close USC and Oregon are to a national championship, I think in 2025, it could be that USC will be closer precisely because of that coaching staff. But at a certain point, you have to have good enough dudes and you have to have enough good dudes, both the depth and the quality. And missing out on Derek Harmon does leave USC short in terms of both depth and quality on that defensive line.
Yeah, there is no doubt. Not just on Harmon, whatever the weird situation with Toya was, whatever that was, Kristen Miller doing his little dance with whatever that was, Williams from TCU. But I'm really beginning to wonder that, is USC willing to overpay for these positions? That's all I'm saying. It is the absolute position of need. Bless some breaks. Did you once hear me say, if you've been listening to our show, I've been saying we absolutely need to get someone for that nose tackle. I'm not sure if you're just popping in, taking your snipes randomly, but no one here is saying I will say don't freak out. You know why? Because it hasn't kicked off yet. We don't know what's going on. I will tell you, though, that if they cannot get some size and depth inside, it's going to be a long year. And I'm circling right now. I'm just circling that Michigan game, because if we have somebody sub 300 pounds playing nose guard for us, we are going to be in deep trouble. That, if you don't have that nose tackle right there up in front, that point of attack, it's going to be a long day in Ann Arbor. I will tell you that. Is it time to freak out? We could be like Bless Some Breaks and freak out every single time and be negative all the time. That's great. But being negative all the time is not being objective, right? You don't have to be negative to be these people. Sometimes these fantasies that you have to be negative to be objective. No, you could also just be objective. And the fact is if you were paying attention, USC may get a lot better with Bryce Foster. Where I had worries about the offensive line, they land Bryce Foster. They pull that guy in. I'm telling you, that changes the dynamic of the offensive line. and that's a whole different conversation. USC is not overpaying, and I mean really overpaying for a nose tackle. I think a lot of these guys are asking, and SC saying, we don't need you that bad. Because none of these guys, by the way, none of the names we're naming, Matt, are going to be NFL day one, guys. These guys are not, none of these guys are spectacular. They're just, solid guys. I'm not saying they're not. They would be a difference maker on this line, but they're not going to be a difference maker overall. And so to pay, whatever it is, 600, 800, whatever it's going to be to get these guys is just a waste of money, in my opinion.
I've been ready to jump on the point that Tim just made because I think it's a good one. That I think because of the transfer portal being new to college football in regards to its magnitude and its volume, I think it brings that free agency excitement to college football. Some people hate it. Some people love it. If your team's benefiting, of course, you enjoy it. But there's a lot of attention given to these transactions. And I think a lot of these players are overplayed as being high-end commodities. And there's very few of them, especially in the spring market. Derek Harmon, it's not like he was an all Big Ten performer along the defensive front. He was not last year. He's a solid player. He started every game for Michigan State the last 2 years. Turned in 30 and 40 tackles, made very few disruptive plays in the backfield, 3.5 tackles for loss the last 2 seasons. Really good player, really good piece that he could have contributed to this USC front. But I just think that I'm not talking about necessarily either one of you, but that the fan bases, not just USC fan bases across the board, are making too much out of a lot of these additions when there's only 6 to 8 to 10 players out there that are truly all conference potential type players. And Derek Harmon is probably not one of them. Now, he could continue to blossom. He's had, again, 2 very solid seasons at Michigan State. He could wind up on an all-conference team at the end of 2024. That's possible, but he's not Bear Alexander of 2024.
Yeah, I agreed. It's where it's hurting. What I hear Matt saying is that it's an absolute position of need. It just is. And you know what? Here's the thing, though. I'm not going to crack on the staff because it's not like they haven't attempted to fill that position. It's just I think that now they're maybe the failure. If there is a failure, Matt, it was maybe early on, not reading the room, not just getting a solid piece in place. Maybe that's where earlier in this whole process, getting in and not really going for some of these other players to go, hey, look, we just need someone 315, 325. There's going to be a space here in the middle to give us some depth and to be able to stop if someone wants to run right at us. They can plug that middle of the field. I get that part of it, but overall, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm looking at our roster. I'm looking at the roster additions that USC has this year, and there is a big spotlight on that nose tackle position. There's no doubt about it. But it wasn't like there weren't attempts made. I just don't think that SC's in a position. And if you look at the high school class they're bringing in, they are going right after defensive line and getting top quality 5-star guys. I don't think they want to blow all their money on a mediocre for 1 year when they could save that money to throw towards a class next year. I just don't think it's good. This is business now, right? It's bad business to throw money away like that.
Well, and this brings up the point that when we see players transfer out of programs, obviously if the transfer is really elite, then that's a loss. That's a gut punch for a program. But a lot of the time, and this applies to basketball as much as football, when you see certain people or players transfer out of a program, the initial reaction is not frustration. It's, oh, that means an upgrade's coming in the other way through the portal. One guy's going out, then we're going to get someone even better coming in. And, I haven't talked about this before, but like when Isaiah Rakes left, my initial reaction wasn't, darn it. It was, oh, they have someone lined up. Coach Henney has someone lined up. And it didn't happen. So that raises some real concerns for me that, okay, when Isaiah Rakes left, I was thinking, well, okay, so surely they have someone coming in from the other side in the spring portal window. And now we're sitting here and no, So when something like that happens, that like someone dropped the ball somewhere. I mean, and exactly where it was or when it was, we don't know, but like that is not how things are supposed to work. When a guy like you're bringing in a guy from Texas A&M, space filler in the middle, and he transfers back out 3 months later. And my thought was when the last time we gathered for a show, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. My thought was, this has to mean that Rakes just wasn't measuring up on the field in spring ball, because why else would you transfer out 3 months later? It just doesn't make sense. If you bother to come to a school, if you bother to transfer to a school, and you're leaving 3 months later, that to me, the most logical response to any of that is that you just weren't measuring up, and you need to go where you're going to be assured of getting playing time. That was my initial thought with Isaiah Rakes, but now I find myself questioning that, because this wasn't a case of, well, we got better guys on the roster. Isaiah, you're not going to see the field very much. No, there isn't an incoming transfer prospect, and USC is still shorthanded, such that if we lived in a world where Isaiah Rakes was on this roster, I mean, he'd have to play just because he would need to be part of a rotation up front. So that is the really concerning thing to me. And again, I don't know exactly where or when any of these things happen, but at some point in that larger process, that larger reality, it's not the way things are supposed to happen. We can all agree on that.
Yeah. Well, when that happened, actually, my first guess was he looked over at Bear and went, and he tried to do a Bear, and SC said, well, bye. And again, we'll never know, Matt. That's off of zero. I have zero information. That was my gut feeling. It was weird for him to come in and like that article, on Trojan's Wire, he was talking up, how much he loved, Rakes just sitting there talking about she loved Lynn's system, loved why he came, and he was loving everything early in camp. And all of a sudden something changed, obviously, really quickly. We probably will never know what that was, but at the end of the day, the issue is SC is looking very light, not talented. There's a lot of talent that they're going to have there, but they're looking really light in the middle of that defensive line now. And if God forbid Bear Alexander goes down, it might be again, you're going to see teams run right at the middle of that field if that happens. We have really good talent, but they're younger and they don't have the size on yet. They don't have that college strength yet. But we're going to see. There are some big, strong dudes that are freshmen that are coming in, but would they be ready? Most likely not. Do they have the size? Are any of them 320? No, they are not. So those are your holes, and that's your issue, and that's what USC is going to have to figure out.
Our buddy Will ND is here. Will, thank you so much for being here and being a member. As a Notre Dame fan, folks, as a Notre Dame fan, Will has been a great friend of the show and the channels and everything for quite some time. Congratulating Tim, Matt, and myself on our 100th show. So let's see, Matt, we are 4 weeks shy of 2 years when we got together for the first time live to launch our USC live show that Tim aptly has joined and then also rebranded, knowing what USC commodities are out there. So Tim keeping us in check at every pass. Well,
and if you really want to, there were 30 other Trojan Conquest shows before. So if you want to add those on, this 130, but it's 100 on the Monday that you and Matt started, correct?
Okay. So. All right. If you can keep track of all of that, folks, we're just happy to be here every Monday. And then, of course, Tim and Matt get together every Friday. And we are steamrolling ahead during the off season into May now. And when Matt and I jumped on, Tim, the graphic concerning Reggie Bush's 8th Heisman, was that just left over from a few weeks ago? I didn't know if you wanted to continue to your off-season celebration.
No, I'm good with that for a while. I think maybe later on we start talking about it'd be fun to talk about which game he's going to come out. That could be interesting speculation a little bit down the road, but it's going to be special. I've been hammering it. Our channel's been hammering it. A lot of people have been hammering it. I know Matt has over on Trojan's Wire. So it's just about time, and when the thing that kills me the most about people is that they're talking about all these other different things. It literally, the one thing that I kept saying for well over a year was, it's not against, if it's against the rules, fine. But if the rule is based on a law that's unconstitutional, then it never should have been a law. So it never should have been a rule. So just stick with that. And it's easy to see everyone else coming in for the woodwork say, yeah, but what about ours? What about this? What about that? If it sticks that same premise, if it's really literally a marketing agent doing the NIL stuff that's being done right now, that the Supreme Court said basically is unconstitutional, then have at it. Sure, let's remove everything. But the other people that have broken law rules and NCAA rules in the past, and one thing very clear that even the major outlets get wrong. Be very clear when anyone ever says this, you Trojans. USC didn't pay Reggie Bush and his family a house to come to USC. All of these allegations that were made were after he had already been there for about over a year and a half. So it was never about USC getting him to come to the school, right? It was the fact he was there, and the people that were involved had nothing to do with USC. Zero to do with USC.
Before we get to this comment from Roy, I want to piggyback off of that because it's a good segue into our all-time program rankings that we are unveiling this week at the Voice of College Football over on the main channel. So we delivered, to start the series, the Pac-12. We put a final bow on the Pac-12. Some people were like, why are you addressing the Pac-12? Well, it's an all-time program ranking, and now the metrics are all sealed and they're finished. And this is not a spit at the wall kind of like Alabama's probably number one, maybe Ohio State, maybe Notre Dame's number two, and then we'll put Ohio State 3. No, it's not that business. No, winning percentage, major bowl wins, national championships, conference championships. We even put a metric in there that is conference championship percentage, meaning it's not fair to rate the ACC beginning in 1953 and Florida State joins in 1992 and others joined in 2004, a percentage of conference championships since you've been in the league, national championships, first round picks, overall NFL draft selections, All-Americans, award winners at every position, Heisman Trophy wins. We looked at the winning percentage of all these teams in the college football playoff era, the 21st century and post-1970, in addition to all time. So we're not just making things up and just guessing. No, it's a pretty radical look at that took hours and hours and hours and hours of labor of love to put these together. So we're going to roll out every conference, then we're going to put them all together, make our comparisons. Do I promote it as a perfect system? Not in any such way. There are things that if I had a limitless database, I would add to it, but it's a pretty comprehensive look at these programs all time. And we did post the Pac-12 today, and the contingent here would be pretty pleased with the results, I believe.
I think when it comes to the Pac-12, there's literally no competition for USC.
No, there's not.
Zero. And I mean zero.
We all posted the AP poll points.
Yeah.
It is zero. There is a UCLA Washington battle for a tier way below.
Yeah. And I would, again, you can, everyone values things differently. And usually I think it does kind of tend to sway towards their team strength. But, like with me, I really, you and I, the only thing, I love the rankings. The only thing you and I ever argue on, Mark, is I think that there should be a lot more weight given to major bowl victories. Next to national championships, major bowl victories to me should be the biggest ones, because I agree in lately, it's not the same thing with some of these bowl games. So overall bowls don't mean much. But when we talk about the ones that get designated as the BCS bowls, the New Year's Day bowls, the New Year's Six bowls, the games that are meant put usually conference champion against conference champion for decades, those to me, because who knows what USC would have done if they were in the Big Ten, in the 60s and 70s. Who knows what USC's record would have been back then? Who knows what Ohio State's record would have been in the ACC We can mix and match these things because I do know that every year, if you do look at those 60s and 70s and 80s, well, actually just forever, USC, look at USC's non-conference schedules that they've been scheduling since forever. And I'll put that up against anybody in college football. I think USC has done a great job historically of going across the country. They played Alabama 8 times. They played Ohio State outside of the Rose Bowl, about 5-6 times, something like that, 8 times. So USC is consistently gone out and played the best teams, in the country. And then you have some schools historically that have not done that. And so it's kind of hard to say, well, this team has a higher win percentage when teams don't play the same schedule. So, but I get it. Like your big point being was you don't have the time or the money or whatever.
This is my database
to crunch all of the numbers in order to do that. So I would definitely, because here's my pushback. Yes, Michigan, Ohio State have amazing, and Notre Dame have amazing win totals and win percentages. But what are their bowl records? That's why that's all I throw out there for discussion, is all I say.
No, I completely agree with you. I would love to add a strength of schedule component, and also consider, Tim, I am giving 3 times more weight to major bowl victories than other bowl victories.
Okay.
One nuance within this discussion of what a quote unquote major bowl win is that the value of a Cotton Bowl win, for example, in the 1980s was very different from a Cotton Bowl win in the late 1990s after the death of the Southwest Conference. And the Cotton Bowl became like a 10 a.m. local time game. It was kind of a dump to the side on Fox on New Year's morning. This wasn't CBS at 12:45, 1 o'clock. In the game's heyday. And also, you could also say the same thing for the Rose Bowl, that the Rose Bowl through the early 1990s was a massive game. But then when the BCS entered and you had games like Washington State, Oklahoma, in which the tradition got broken up and the Rose Bowl began to be seen as, a consolation prize and not this, it meant everything. When Dick Enberg and Merlin Olsen called the game, when Keith Jackson called the game, it was a centerpiece, but not as much on a number of occasions in the BCS era, certainly in the years when it was not the national championship game in the BCS rotation. So you have nuances and degrees of difference in terms of just how major a given bowl game was, with the premium label. So you have to look at history to say just how major a bowl game was depending on the era.
And my nuance back to you, Matt, would be this. Those 25 Rose Bowl victories USC has, I think, is unparalleled in our sport as far as playing at that high level, because those 25 were against the Big Ten. They're probably some early ones against Duke or something. I don't know. That maybe a couple thrown in there.
Not against Illinois. Not against Illinois in 2008, for example.
Right.
And we all wish that 2008 Rose Bowl could have been against Georgia, but instead we had USC, Illinois, waste of everyone's time. And again, I've said this to Mark. I'm not sure he remembers, but he might, that I have never, ever feared for the lives of football players more than when that Georgia-Hawaii Sugar Bowl was being played. I really did think that a Hawaii player would go to the hospital, or several Hawaii players would go to the hospital. It was that violent, a beatdown and mismatch. We could have just had USC, Georgia, and then we could have sent, Illinois and Hawaii to the little kids table. But no, the BCS just refused to give college football fans what they wanted.
Absolutely. But the great majority, absolutely, USC played the best out of the Big Ten and took care of business.
But I can't see it. So I can't wait to see it, Mark. It's always great to see. I'm sure USC will be number 2 right behind Alabama, where they should be. We'll just leave. We'll wait for that special moment when you pull back the curtain, Mark. We'll see if USC is at its rightful place at number 2. We'll see how that goes. And then Roy, to Roy's comment, this is bang on. This is exactly what I'm saying. You guys go ahead and take a look at USC's high school. Everyone's been yelling about, NIL and USC's not getting involved and et cetera, blah, blah. Well, you look at what they're doing, USC's doing now, you'll understand what Roy's saying here. You want to throw $800,000 at a nose tackle and maybe get a couple wins in a season. Most likely USC is not going to win the national championship. I just don't think that the roster is there yet to be able to do that. I'm not counting it out, but that's not likely, right? The prudent move is not to throw $800,000 at a mid nose tackle. You take that money and you invest it into a 5-star defensive tackle, I don't know, maybe from Georgia that wants to come to USC, and you start a foundation of a team that you're going to be able to build that way. I think that when the prices shot up for these guys, I think they made that business decision, and I think Roy's spot on.
Okay, let's unpack this. I think the timing of this is germane to the decision that you ultimately make, because if we're talking about December, and you think that the pick of groceries is not, Whole Foods, you think it's more like 7-Eleven, you can then say, oh, we'll bide our time and we'll wait for the spring portal. But this is the spring portal. So when's the next go round? You don't have that luxury before the season. So I think I just not necessarily disagreeing about the philosophy or even the final decision, but I would only say that the timing of this does change the calculus to a certain extent. And to Roy, and thank you for the comment, Roy, may get us an extra win or two. If those signings are worth 2 extra wins, I think that's worth it. If you're 11-1 instead of 9-3, and you get, you don't win the national title, but it makes the difference between getting to the playoff and not, I would say that's worth it. So, if it's 1 win, no, you don't move heaven and earth for 1 win. 2, that is pretty significant from where I'm sitting. So it's an interesting point with a lot of layers to it.
No, and I like that. I didn't really think about that, Matt. But what have we been talking about? We've been talking about 2 things. One, so the number one thing they want is, I believe, the top athletes, they want to get to the NFL. They have a path to the NFL, and they want to be a first-day draft pick. So they want that development. We know that development piece is there at USC now. It's to be proven on the field, but as the drafts go, like we think they're going to go, then that's going to have to. So once those drafts start going, and you start seeing guys from USC go into the draft on day 1, you start landing these top players. That's the first step, right? But another thing also is going to be wins, like you said. That these kids, everyone wants to see wins. Know that this defense will work, because no one wants to go to a team, you're right, that's losing. So that's where it goes. But the number and the player, and it's not over yet. What's the difference between a mid-level nose tackle and a couple of nose tackles that may be a step below that? I mean, I don't know how much a drop-off is. That's what I'm talking about as far as what's your return on investment for $800,000 between a pretty good nose tackle and a couple of serviceable nose tackles. That's going to be key. You're right. I mean, if this thing folds like a house of cards in the middle, then Matt, that's when you go, I guess that $800,000 was worth it, because now SC's lost 4 or 5 games, and it looked like they were able to exploit the middle of the defense, and the whole thing falls apart. That could be a very thing, because Lynn's defense, and I'm not saying it's predicated on a Jay Toya type person, but he did have that guy in the middle to hold the middle. And will USC have that guy to hold the middle? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. But again, these are all hypotheticals. And to the guy, I forgot his name, was talking about me saying don't panic. I'm saying don't panic now. Am I worried? Oh, hell yeah, I'm worried. But let's see how it plays out before we start freaking out over, not getting a mid-level nose tackle.
Yeah. And I want to just be very clear. I'm not disagreeing with what Roy is saying. I'm just saying that I think certain circumstances, certain particular situational details, contextual details can really reshape this discussion. It's not disagreement. It's just, I think it's good for us as a USC community, as a fan base, to kind of talk through these nuances. Roy's saying that an 800K lineman and even a top-notch tackle will not put us on target for a national title. I would agree. Okay, given where USC is, making those specific additions would not be enough to lift USC to national title quality. But I would just raise the point that, does it have to raise us to national title quality? If it is the difference between not making the playoff and, let's say, getting a number 10 seed in the playoff, and we lose in the first round, but we're in there, didn't come especially close to the national championship, but got into the playoff as opposed to staying out, like doing that, achieving that in this new 12-team playoff era, that would carry substantial value into the recruiting trail and the transfer portal, so that for Derek Harmon situations and for situations involving players much better than Derek Harmon in future recruiting and portal battles, let's recall Josh Connerly as well. If you make the playoff instead of going 9-3 and playing in the Holiday Bowl, that difference, a difference of 1 or 2 wins, probably 2, that could make the difference in terms of future recruiting results, future transfer portal results, all these things that over time they add up. And if you collect enough wins, off the field the way Oregon is, and you combine that with the quality of coaching USC has, you have the roster and the coaching, then you are at a national title level. So not right now, but for the future. And Roy makes the very salient, important point that it's important to play your younger guys, to develop them, get them in the system, give them live reps. That is all true. But you also don't want to be conceding a season, saying that this is going to be a developing year. You always have to have your program at a certain level so that your floor as a program doesn't fall the way it cratered at USC last year, 7-5 regular season, 8-5 overall. You always have to balance those competing tensions. So again, not disagreeing with Roy, but just trying to make sure we see the various layers of this conversation.
I've said it a bunch of times. I'll say it again. It's part of the reason why I can't stand a certain school is the fact that Josh Connerly absolutely would have made a huge difference last year. If he was wearing cardinal gold, he was playing left tackle. He had Jonah Monheim at right tackle. Believe me, what we saw on the field last year with Caleb running for his life would not have happened. But nope. I'm also good. But here's my biggest point, though, Matt. I'm not going to put Harmon and Josh Connerly in the same stratosphere. I mean, I'm saying, like, if we had an elite defensive tackle, then I'm saying, yeah, 800. You got to throw that money at him. You got to grab him. He's going to be worth his weight in gold. Please, let's do that. But that wasn't the case, and really, that isn't the case. And what USC is doing is they're looking down the line, and they're looking for the fact that they do want to land a big high school class. And now I'm going in circles, but yeah, you need to use your money efficiently. I don't think that we have an 86-year-old Nike mogul that's going to be throwing and paying way over the price tag because they can. I mean, heck, it's almost like the days where you say, you know what, we may not need him, but we could sure hurt the Trojans. Why don't we yoink him? I mean, when you have billions of dollars and not much time to live and you want to get that national championship, you're going to do what you need to do. I don't think USC is that desperate at this point.
All right, let's tackle this really good comment from Gary from Dana Point, one of our best callers on our Friday show with Tim. Really good point here. Are we going back to have to score 40 points a game to win? So like that, really, this is a really timely question with USC not having the depth it needs along the defensive front. So it's a very natural reaction and response from Gary. Does this mean USC is going to have to outscore people? My thought is this. Well, I'll finish and then hand it over to you, Tim. My thought, Gary, is that this increases the need for USC to be able to run the ball in the Big Ten. I think that's what this really means, especially with Miller Moss, who, again, he's not Caleb Williams, where he's working within the structure of the offense. He's good at taking the check down. So I think this, Gary, is going to create a situation where short passing, ball control passing basically as an extended handoff is going to, might need to figure more prominently. This assumes USC does not get that difference maker at defensive tackle in the portal, and that USC enters the 2024 season without the requisite amount of depth it needs. I think the adjustment, Gary, is that USC would need to just, have 8-minute touchdown drives, lots of short passes, convert 3rd and 1, kind of the way, the service academies do, and also run the play clock down into, underneath 10 seconds, the way the offense did in the second half of the Cotton Bowl against Tulane, and it still wasn't enough. But like USC was regularly taking the play clock under 10 in that second half of the Cotton Bowl. I think, doing things to maximize ball control and minimize the exposure of the defense, that would be the adjustment, not trying to win games 52-42.
One thing we have to remember also is the fact that USC is an important position, an important spot in football field, no doubt about it. And you're right. You're only as strong as your weakest point of, on your defensive wall. But USC has gotten better all the way across the board on defense. I mean, look at almost every single position on that defense. And I do believe that there have been some significant upgrades on the defense. And we also know, like we've been living and we've been screaming, and Oklahoma fans were screaming for, is what is this guy Grinch doing? Even if Lynn cannot replicate what he did at UCLA last year, which was just phenomenal what he did in 1 year, taking the defense before, the year before, and then turning into a top 5, top 10 defense and a lot of really good defensive statistical categories. Let's just say he just brings us to a decent defense. And let's just say we have a mediocre middle of the defensive line. Let's just say that. We're not playing, Oregon, Washington, Arizona. The Big Ten, yes, they've got some good teams in the Big Ten, but I don't see any killer offenses that we're going. We don't play Ohio State. We don't play Oregon. Who are these amazing defenses that we need to score 40? Who's going to be putting 40 points up? I think our defense is going to be significantly better. I think that the offensive line has got to be better than it was last year. Those two factors together tell me that we're not going to be in those shootout games. When you have athletes like you're going to see against LSU, when you're going to have a big pounding lines that come right at that defensive line of USC, when we go to Ann Arbor, yeah, those are some serious worrying points, But I didn't see. I'm sorry, I didn't see a whole lot. I'm sure Mark's going to correct me, but I didn't see a whole lot in that Penn State game to make me shake when they come to the Coliseum, because we got that game at home. Is there an offense that USC needs to be like worried about? There'll be the same equivalent as like we saw last year when we played Washington or Oregon. And by the way, to remind everybody, we weren't blown out in those games, even with that defense we had last year. We weren't blown out of either one of those games. So, Mark, is there like an offense in the Big Ten that USC is going to be facing this year that we really need to? That's closely on the level of those teams.
No, there's not. That group of Pac-12 quarterbacks that we saw play last year is difficult to match in any collection, any conference that we've seen in the last 10 or 15 years. So that does not exist. Michigan's lost a top 5 pick at quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, even though they didn't choose to utilize him on the basis that Bo Nix and Michael Penix were used. And then I would not be surprised, however, if Drew Aller is a much better player this year than he was in his first full season as a former 5-star. He did have a 25-2 touchdown to pick ratio last year. They need to get him better play at wide receiver.
And the counter to, if you don't have a quarterback and wide receivers that can hurt you, you can stack the box and make him throw the ball. So we might be light in the middle, but that's fine. Then you get big in the middle. You stack the box and you make them throw out of that front. I mean, those are the things you can do against some of the teams USC is going to play. So I don't think we're going to be in 40-point shootouts, Gary. I mean, we are. It's 2 years in a row that USC thought they'd fix the defense, and they sure didn't.
Michigan lost its two best wide receivers, and they have not replaced them. Now, they may have the best tight end in college football in Colston Loveland, but Michigan's worst position is wide receiver as well. And we don't even know who's going to play quarterback. It's probably going to be Alex Orji, which is going to drastically change the dynamic of their offense. And don't expect them to be a willing contributor to the passing game if they don't have to be.
I like this one. This is just going back to that conversation. Monheim most likely will not move to tackle as much as you would want. I do believe, I don't think it's been written in stone, but there have been comments that have been made that basically Monheim came back to improve his NFL draft stock, and he wants to play on the inside because that's where he projects to be in the NFL. He just doesn't have that NFL tackle frame. I mean, he's the kind of kid, I bet you that if they asked him to play that I mean, I'm not speaking for him at all, whatever. I do think though that way you get around this though is you could move him to guard. I mean, you know, he's been learning when he's been playing center. He's been learning, and by the way, he'd be a great fallback. You know, let's say the center gets, you know, let's say what's the Foster, Bryce Foster. I can't remember.
Yes, the Texas A&M.
Yeah, the A&M center. Okay, so if he comes in, you put him at center. If he goes down, then you slide, you know, Jonah, who got a lot of practice at center in spring. You know, I'm sure he's gonna get some looks in fall as well. Continue to, but you slide him over to guard. Now all of a sudden, you know, those young guards can kind of get a little time. We're really, I'm very excited about the young offensive linemen that we have. But if you can, the more time you can give them to develop, the better. I mean, I'm just gonna say we got some big, tough guys, but I think that if you could put Monheim, who is just an amazing offensive lineman, it's an upgrade at guard. And if there's not much of a drop off at center, you've just upgraded your line. I mean, you know, Mason Murphy's been getting glowing reports that he's doing much better. I'm not saying that anyone's saying he's going to be the next Brad Buddy, you know, or Keith Van Horn, or even a Tyron Smith. But he's going to get the job done at right tackle, which was not getting done that right. So if you got Monheim and you have him with another year under his belt, and that right side is kind of taken care of, we know what we saw in the Holiday Bowl, and I'm really excited to see what this offense is like. I think this would really be a big answer. I don't know about you, Matt. I mean, there's still some question marks. As much as I'm bullish and excited about it, it's going to be interesting to see how the line comes here. Putting another veteran piece in the middle there, allowing Monheim to slide over and play guard and just play nasty inside, I think would be the best situation for SC. You got a lot more veteran depth that way. Okay,
I don't want to rain on your parade, Tim, but you know, there is a Texas A&M College Wire site, Aggies Wire. So, you know, when I took note of the Bryce Foster visit to USC, I went to Aggies Wire, saw what they had to write when Bryce Foster entered the portal. This is just Aggies Wire, okay, not me, but Aggies Wire said, you know, Bryce Foster never really fit at A&M, never really gelled, never really hit his stride for whatever reason. So, like, this doesn't seem like an instant ready to start piece. It would be more of a depth piece, maybe with a developmental aspect, rather than an instant plug and play guy along that offensive line.
My understanding was he played really well as a freshman, and that he got hurt, and then he had some nagging injuries. That was my understanding of it. But obviously they'd be a little more in touch with the situation than I am. But yeah, I'm assuming
they were not crying over his departure. Let's put it that way.
Right.
He was a high-level prospect. He was a top 100 player, top 15 player in the state of Texas, top 5 interior offensive lineman. But that was, of course, his scout.
I wish I could attribute it
production on the field.
I wish I could attribute it to somebody. I can't remember. I remember reading from somewhere. I went, okay, the person was, whatever I read from was like, I'm like, okay, talking about the fact that he had a solid freshman year. So I don't know. I mean, again, the guys at Aggies Wire would know more than me. I'm just saying we don't need him to be, you know, like Remington level or something like insane. You know what I mean? We need a guy that has a veteran presence in the middle, that's played center, that has that experience, right? And is going to allow us to get a little more veteran depth. That's all I'm saying. I know Monheim can play anywhere on that line.
Depth for sure. Depth for sure. Like that we need depth and bring it on however we can get it. No question. Just in terms of upside and in terms of plug and play and being a ready to go starter. I just wanted to raise a little bit of a cautionary note there.
And with or without him, again, I'm more than happy with, like I've always been talking about, with our offensive line. Those young guys aren't so young anymore. This is their second year. I am expecting, just like at almost every position across the board. And, it's not just quarterbacks. That year two, the light goes on, nothing's new to you anymore. You've got a year of weight training. You got the nutrition for a year. You put some size on. You're a year older. You're not playing against guys that, you're not just right out of high school playing against guys that are like 22 with kids. You know what I mean? You're actually, you make that leap. And I do think that a lot of these guys are going to make that jump. I just think having that, you're saying depth, I'm saying just another piece. You're right, because now all of a sudden Lovelace is gone. That centers there's also got a little bit thin. So we'll see.
Thank you
Not
so
forgetting
much.
Kill Switch. Sorry.
Thank you, everyone, for being here at the Voice of College Football. About 320 total on the line, but quite the gathering on X/Twitter. With about 140 people here on YouTube. So just keep in mind that while we enjoy the combined audience, of course, you can make your comments and questions known here on YouTube. So please make it a point to join us on YouTube every Monday at 7 Pacific time with Tim and with Matt. Then, of course, on Friday night, Tim and Matt get together and take your calls. The first ever USC call-in show driven by you. So you produce the show, you bring the topics. Tim and Matt take your calls and take your topics.
We've been getting some new callers.
I just want to say that Tim has been like Sisyphus the last few weeks. He's been rolling the boulder up the hill and just carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. May 10, he doesn't have to roll the boulder up the hill anymore. So we're going to have a very celebratory Friday call-in show. Tim will be liberated, and very much looking forward to that, because Tim's had just a ton of work at his regular job. And so just want to say, Tim, you're almost there.
I will tell you this.
Persevere and fight on. Just 4 more days, baby.
I have my master's, and now I've had board certification. And I'm telling you what, I am never writing another. I love writing articles, but I am never writing another academic paper for the rest of my life. That is a promise. I don't care what money they wave in front of me. I am never doing this process or anything close. I'm not writing. I'm not. Yeah, I'm done. It's literally killing me, but I'm almost done. So yeah, absolutely, Matt.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
You'll
be able to write for me again.
Tim, your next extensive academic pursuit could be revising my program rankings metrics.
No, I think you'll do a fine job of that. I'm just can't wait to see SC at number 2, right? Right, Mark? Can't wait. I'm excited.
We'll see what the points say. All right, everyone. We do so much appreciate you being here. Matt and Tim make this go. So they are the guys that deliver each and every Monday, each and every Friday as well. So the next time you see them, again, the big celebration for Tim having crossed the finish line and taking your phone calls on USC Football Friday at 6 Pacific time. And we will see you then. For Matt, for Tim, Trojans Wire's the stop to make each and every day for USC athletics coverage. And we will see you on Friday.